Hey guys, Ari Meirov here. It is a Tuesday of NFL Spotlight, but for today, we're kind of off with the new guest. We actually want to repurpose one of our guests that we had on the show late in the 2024 NFL season, and simply because he's in the news a lot here this offseason. It is Bengals defensive end Trey Hendrickson. We spotlighted him last year at around week 16 of the season as he was going to become the player who had the most sacks in the NFL last year. We had him on the show. He almost never did media to that point. So getting him on the show was quite a big deal. And we spoke about his career and his journey going from a mid-round pick to the Saints and barely playing to eventually signing a big free agent deal with Cincinnati, which many people criticized how much money he got. And he quickly made people regret those comments. So a really, really fun conversation with Trey, who as of right now is still in Cincinnati, obviously wants a new deal, but I think it's important for people to get to know the person as well. So we're going to bring back this interview here on this Tuesday with Trey Hendrickson and get to know him a little bit better. Joining us today here on NFL Spotlight, he is one of the best and most underrated pass rushers in the NFL, a three-time Pro Bowler, a true sack artist from the Cincinnati Bengals. It is Trey Hendrickson. Trey, thanks so much for doing this. How are you doing, man?
Doing good, good work, good week of work, and ready to get after Cleveland.
Yep, it's an honor to have you on up here, first of all. Like when this show started back in July, our goal is to have people who deserve more recognition on the show. And when we were doing this, like you were one of the first three names we had on here, and we were like, we got to get Trey on. And I'm so happy we're able to do this now. Levante David was like our first guest, and I was like, I hope to get Trey in the top three over here. But we made it work over here a few months later. I know you're not the biggest media guy out there, so I really appreciate it. And I want to go through your entire career journey, let fans get to know you a little bit better as well. And I want to start from the very beginning because you grew up in Florida outside of Orlando and you were a decorated high school athlete in football, including winning state stuff. But I want to start with your lacrosse career, where we're going to show a video of you here. Trey, was your entire job just to wreck people? What in the world is this?
Well, I mean, my dad and our family always grew up watching hockey, so you always needed an enforcer, and there are a couple instances. That was a little bit of what I did, but there was a lot of obviously stick work too. My brother and I have always been throwing a lacrosse ball. He's he was my best friend growing up. So being out back and throwing the ball with him and learning the game was so fun. For Floridians, to play lacrosse is unique. So. Talent really wasn't there like a Maryland, type, but we definitely got after him. So.
This video is amazing. When I saw it for the first time, I was like, "Holy cow!" I got to bring it up over here on this show. Let me just ask you, in terms of like sports growing up, was football always the goal for you? Like, what sports were you into, and was the goal to always get into football as the main thing?
Well, it was something that my dad wanted me to play as many sports as possible, and that was something I was ready to do. I mean, if they had a spot on the bowling team, I think I would have played, but they were pretty solid. But yeah, it was basketball, baseball, football. I just fell in love with football, the game. You need 11 guys, and you're playing for your brother. A lot of characteristics in life. You can't really do it on your own. So the support of my family, my friends. Football was definitely the one that I wanted to pursue in college, and from there on.
So you mentioned college. So after high school, you went a couple hours away from home to Florida Atlantic. What was it like going to college in your home state of Florida? Was that important for you to be somewhere close to home?
Well, I didn't have a ton of offers. FAU was one of those that I got to play defensive end at. I feel I could have played tight end, but it was one of the things I loved, sacking the quarterback. It was something I was very passionate about, and FAU was willing to offer me a defensive end. Being close to home and my family means so much to me. Mom and dad have been so supportive, and that they were able to drive to my games, that it was something that they were able to do on a weekly basis, meant a lot to me.
Well, being at FAU, you had a very dominant college career. You set the school record of 29 and a half sacks. You finish up over there, and you were drafted by the New Orleans Saints in the third round, number 103 overall. What was the draft process like for you? What were the emotions when it finally got there? And what were you expecting when the draft finally came? Were you expecting to be higher, lower? What were the plans over there?
Well, it was a pretty quiet draft process. It was not something where I knew where I would fit in. I was blessed to have an opportunity at the East West Shrine Bowl game, and there I was able to kind of get some attention. And through that, I was very blessed to be drafted to the New Orleans Saints in the third round. As a competitor, you always want to be what they want you to be. So I was so thankful to the Benson family and for the opportunity, and I got to kind of grow my career there, and I'm incredibly thankful for the New Orleans Saints.
Yeah, I mean, that draft class, for what it's worth, is one of the greatest draft classes in NFL history with Marshawn Lattimore, Ryan Ramczyk, Marcus Williams, obviously yourself, Alvin Kamara, Alex Anzalone, who's been doing great in Detroit. I mean, it was quite the draft class there in New Orleans, and it's always going to be remembered because of how it really uplifted that team eventually to making some runs. I do want to ask you about one particular player in New Orleans who played the same position as you with Cameron Jordan, who is still going strong right now. Are there anything in specific that you learned from him being around him? I know he's quite the character, but anything in particular being around Cameron for those 4 years?
Well, anything Cam does, he's successful at. So it's kind of he has really contagious energy too. He brings it every week, and to be there through the process of the day in and day out of hand fits. He was very generous with his knowledge, being a young rookie and being there for 4 years. He was crucial to my development as a football player. Incredibly humbling experience for me, and I'm forever grateful for a leader, a mentor, and a friend like Cam Jordan. He's a good man, and God bless him because through that I was able to sharpen myself and take the things that I learned from him and make it my own in my own way and take it from there. So it was something that was unexpected. And like I said, very humbling and I'm very blessed to have him not only as a teammate but as a friend.
I mean, he is a future Hall of Famer in my eyes, has been with one team his entire career, multiple contracts there. You were not a full time starter right away. Your final season there was really when you took off and you really got the opportunity, had 13 and a half sacks. What was that final season there like for you where you knew you were going to be a guy on the field much more? And especially knowing it was a contract year, what was the big change over there where you finally were able to take off and truly show your full potential?
A little bit was opportunity met preparation, and I kind of was able to quietly work in the dark, like we were talking about with Cam Jordan. And when I believe Marcus Davenport got hurt in camp, it gave an opportunity for me to step up in a starter. So this was not something that was expected, but it was always something that I believed in my heart, and I always attribute the faith in Jesus Christ as my foundation, having my wife who believes in me and my family that believes in me. And then the opportunity came and I was able to do things that not a lot of people believed that you can do. And that's kind of the story. Is like you have to have faith when nobody else does, and work when nobody else sees, and do things that nobody else will do. And then when opportunity comes, you seize that moment, and that was something I'm blessed to have done. Being in a contract year. And they had obviously Cameron Jordan, who is defensive end one. It gave an opportunity for me to just kind of cut it loose, love on those guys, because I was finally a part of that unit and could affect a game. But it is much easier rushing with a guy like Cameron Jordan. I mean, he made it pretty easy on me. I had Sheldon Rankins, David Onyemata, Marcus Davenport, Demario Davis on rush packages, Alex Anzalone. So it was very simple to just run the hoop there. So a lot of people think it's like, oh, this great season is like Cam is getting triple teamed over there. So, like I'm very grateful for him, and it was a heck of a run.
Yeah, I mean, those 4 years were great. It was probably one of the more bigger disappointments that that team and that crew with all those great players was never able to make it to a Super Bowl. I won't talk about that one year. I will not bring it up over here, but it's that crew and that team. It was just, man, I wish Drew was able to get another one, and that was the year. But you did mention becoming a free agent, and I'm curious as to know after that season and that entire year for you, what was that process like? Because it's really rare for young elite pass rushers to make it to the open market. What was it like for you to now experience that and teams want you and are willing to, give you some life changing contracts over the year?
Yeah, it was something that I was incredibly grateful for the Brown family as well. To have me here, it means a lot to me, and it was a perfect fit. But when you talk about going into free agency, it's a very weird time. Like where am I going to move my wife, who's still in school? There's a lot of questions and things like that. But for it to work this well, and for me to be this happy, and our son being born in Cincinnati. I mean, it's a special place. It's special to my heart, and I'm blessed to have taken care of my family, playing a game I've loved since I was young. And all glory to my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, who was my foundation. And with that faith, I was able to continue to sharpen my sword and be ready for battle.
I remember when you signed in Cincinnati, some people try to call you a one-year wonder. It was an overpay. Why would they do that? He had so much help, like you mentioned. Do you remember all of that? And that did that like fuel you any more going into this new team?
Well, I feel like if you read the headlines, you're kind of doing the wrong things. I think if you listen to other people's opinions, then you're going to be distracted from what your purpose is supposed to be. So you don't want the good to be too good. You don't want the bad to be too bad. You just consistently be the same player and trying to improve and day in and day out doing the work. Those are the things that pay off. People's opinions will always be there. And that's something that's out of my control. But the things that are in my control are how I attack the weight room, how I attack recovery, how I'm game planning this week, how I'm resting this week, and when I go home, what does that look like? And those are the things I have control over. But people's opinions are not something that I'm going to be able to control in life.
Well, people's opinions quickly changed because that first year in Cincinnati, you had your then career high with 14 sacks. You made your first Pro Bowl. You guys made the Super Bowl. What was that entire year like for you? Where on the field, obviously you're doing amazing, and then the team is doing amazing, and you're getting your first Pro Bowl. What was that first year like for you with this new team where all this success was happening?
Well, I think success is always a defensive statistic. Even in a year like this, when I have 12 and a half sacks, I think, it's a lot of credit to this defense because I can't rush alone. We have things that we need to correct, and every year we have that. Even going back to that Super Bowl year, we were kind of on the fence on what way we were going to go as a team, and we kind of found our identity there in the end. So, I was blessed to be on a lot of good teams in Cincinnati, including this one. This is a very talented one, and there's a lot of things that I'm very thankful for. But again, things like that, we can only control the wins and losses. The seeding process was interesting that year. So it was a fun ride. I'm definitely blessed looking back, but I'm more interested in looking forward.
I know I can already tell you're not someone who likes to pat yourself on the back, but here we are here in 2024. You lead the NFL in sacks this year. You are a virtual lock for your fourth Pro Bowl. You are third overall in sacks since that last year in New Orleans. I understand you probably don't want to do it, but do you ever consider yourself as the most underrated pass rush in the league? Like nobody brings you up with some of those bigger names that, have more name recognition, I would say.
Um, that's interesting. Yeah, it's again out of my control. The things that I want to, as my Instagram probably, uh, it kind of exemplifies is, the Lord is good, and that's who I want to, kind of be exemplified in my life, not me and the selfish desires that come with all of these things. I want the, put down self and glorify Him. So, recognition is not something that I'm super interested in. I hope people recognize that we have a good Savior who died for us, and that's the biggest grace that we can have. So, to Him be the glory.
Yeah, first of all, your faith is incredible. And we actually had Trey Smith and Ashley Smith, the Chiefs guard, on here, and he was basically very similar to you with everything that he went through. I don't know if you know his story, but he was diagnosed with blood clots in college, thought his career was over, left it in the hands of God, and then he made it to the NFL. Look at him now. So it's truly incredible. But on the field with what you're doing, I think your name does deserve a little bit more, at least out there in the national perspective. I know you don't really look into that stuff, but it's something that you definitely deserve. Before you mentioned something that in the very beginning that it was either defensive end or tight end. Now, last week, your other defensive end, Sam Hubbard, caught a touchdown. Is there any world where we get you on offense?
I'm not sure. I'd never say never in life. But it was pretty amazing watching Sam score a touchdown. I mean, that guy is a captain through and through. He does the stuff that other people won't. You want him in your foxhole. And for him to score a touchdown on defense, I think it might have been the first Cincinnati defensive player to score on offense. And for Joe Burrow to throw him a dot, I think that was just awesome because they were friends in college too. So it was a pretty amazing moment.
Well, the only thing missing right now is getting Trey Hendrickson on offense for a play. I'm sure Joe Burrow will get the ball to you, and then I'm sure we'll talk more about you on offense, at least not as much as you're getting on defense, because you definitely deserve it when it comes to that side of the ball. All right, last thing I want to ask you this: we ask this to every guest on this show. It's the NFL Spotlight Show. We love spotlighting people here who deserve more recognition. Trey, you could pick anybody you want: a coach, an executive, a player, anybody outside the box. Is there anyone who you believe deserves to be in this seat in the future where we kind of talk about their journey and why they deserve it a little bit?
I'll stay in my defensive room. Joseph Osai is playing at an incredibly high level. He has 3 sacks over the last 4 games. He's kind of coming into his own as a player. To watch him work and kind of be on the other side of this Cam Jordan conversation, which giving him little nuggets of information and things like that, and the adversity that he's overcome and how he glorifies God in his play. I think he's a stud. I think he's going to do great things in the NFL and more importantly in life.
I love it. We're definitely going to work on getting Joseph here on the show as well. He has been super underrated for the team there this year, a young player, an ascending player, and someone who definitely has a bright future here in this league. Trey, I want to thank you for coming here on the show this week. We really appreciate it. I mean, your career has been spectacular. The way you put everything into God's hands and your faith is something that is very inspirational, and continued success with everything you do, and best of luck.
All right, thanks so much.